Good evening, Hall of Fame Dynasty members. It is I, Commissioner John, as usual, and I'm actually joined by one of our guests and owners today, Chris Castaigne, who I couldn't remember the name of last week, if you remember.
Oh, I remember very well.
Dude, I felt so bad when I was in the middle of it. I knew Chris Barnes, and I sat there and I had your name. I knew Chris, obviously, and I'm sitting there just blanking completely last week. I couldn't believe I did it, and I didn't even think about it all night. Then you posted the question of, do you know my name now? And I remembered it right off without having to search. I don't know why.
That's okay. I couldn't believe it. I didn't watch it while it was live. I went back and watched it. I was like, there is no way he does not remember my name, but he remembers Chris Barnes. Like, what?
Barnes is an easy name, though. I mean, there's a couple of pitchers with the last name Barnes. Castaigne, you're the only person I've ever known I've ever seen. So
I guess I could see that, yeah. See that. But that was funny. I couldn't believe it, though.
Dude, I felt so bad, but I was laughing too. I'm like, I know it. I just can't think of it at this moment.
I was like, I got to call him out on it, though.
I should have figured it was going to happen. So we've got you on as a guest tonight. I'm really excited about this. We're getting further and further into the season, and it's really still a close race between the entire league. We've got two leaders, a leader for each division, of course, but really when it comes down to it, it's everything's still in play with a lot to go left in the season. We're only 7 weeks in, not even a full 2 months. So and we've got a lot of call-ups. We've got a lot of good play, a lot of bad play going on. So I'm excited to dig into it tonight.
Everything's still as tight as it was, really. Once you get past you and Keith, everything's tight as it can get.
I mean, we both kind
of the Marlins are getting better.
Yeah, they are. We've been getting. I gotta say, the Rockies, or Keith and myself, have actually been fairly lucky in terms of injuries so far this year. My biggest one so far has been Tyler Glass now, and he sounds like he'll be back. And even though the Rockies, I mean, they lost Jose Altuve and Fernando Tatis Jr. for a bit. But for the most part, they've been healthy, and those aren't season-ending injuries. So we know they'll be back. And he was fairly deep at shortstop anyways, with obviously Adalberto Mondesi and then Max Muncy being able to play second base as well. So depth is always great to have.
I'd say my team's been so injured this year, especially not the past couple of weeks. It's been getting healthier, but at like week 4, it was so unhealthy. Like, I think I had like 10, 12 guys on the IR.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of guys on the IR, but those were ones going into the season, so not too much of a surprise. So
I only had like 2. But
yeah, it happens. I mean, same with Vic and his Yankees. He's been brutally murdered for the most part so far this year, and it sucks, but it's gonna happen. Unfortunately, it hasn't been so spread out so far.
Yeah. But hopefully everybody gets healthy soon.
It would be fun. And I mean, especially just with how close it still is, it's fun. Nobody's out of it. Nobody's running away with it just yet. So let's get into the show here if I can figure out. Okay, so present to everyone. It's been a while since I've done it.
Yeah.
Should show up on yours now.
It is on there. Yeah.
All right, cool. So then if I do present. There we go. So this week in baseball, we've got a couple of interesting storylines, mostly to actually do with the game, not so much with stories off the field. Although Julio Urias did get reinstated by the Los Angeles Dodgers recently. That was something I just remembered off the top of my head right now while we get the show set up. Interesting that he's been reinstated already with the domestic violence charges against him. We'll see what happens there. I think that'll be a storyline to follow, unfortunately, for this year. But he is being able to play at this point, at least. So that does help the Dodgers. Not like they need it much, but they're getting the help regardless.
Yeah, it just adds on to how dominant they are.
Yeah, I mean, it makes them deeper, which is scary for everyone in the NL. But one of the things
that's the way it works with the best teams. They get the guys that the other teams really need.
Of course.
But that's the way it works. So.
But one of the most interesting things that I thought was the Mariners, who started the season 13-2 in their first 15 games, are now last in their division this year. That's mind-blowing to me. The fact that That's 11 games above 500. You had to take a hard spill to be able to say, hey, we're in last place in our division again. That's just, it's insane. I don't get it.
Yeah, typically on that one, usually you have that team that starts off good, but usually not that good, and then you usually have one of those bad teams that start up kind of like I guess 10-5 or 11-5, something like that, and then they usually fall off. But not 13-2. That's a drastic change.
Well, their current record is 23-27. That means they won 10 games and lost 25.
God.
Wow. That is hard. That sucks so bad.
That's pretty bad. I mean,
and then going on to other surprising storylines, we've got the Marlins swept the Mets this weekend. I know the Mets aren't the greatest team, but they're not a terrible team either. And the Marlins in real life are a AAA team for the most part, filled with guys like Austin Dean. It seems like a team that you would just absolutely make up in MLB The Show of, I'm just going to rename everyone with these bullshit names and put them on the field. And the Marlins somehow swept them this weekend. I don't know how, but they may be able to avoid setting the new loss record because they're already at 13 wins. Those 3 wins themselves help them a ton.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I wasn't expecting it, considering what the Mets have. You wouldn't think that the Marlins, out of all teams, would sweep them.
Oh, hell no. Maybe take 1, but that's it.
If they're lucky, they might win the series 2 games, but 3 games, and one of them with a shutout, I believe.
Yeah, Sandy Alcantara pitched a shutout, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then I don't know how many people know this name of Koji Uehara. He's officially retired. And he played for the Orioles for the most part, Rangers. He had a season with the Red Sox, or a few seasons with the Red Sox, and 1 season with the Cubs. Not a great name. He was one that I did own for a few years because he had a decent career here in the States. But he officially retired. Yeah. And then mentioning the Mets one last time, somehow Mickey Callaway has still hired by the New York Mets. And according to a tweet I saw earlier today, 2 names to watch that could replace him soon if he doesn't get his act straight are Dusty Baker and Buck Showalter. Showalter, obviously, longtime Orioles manager, and Dusty Baker, known mostly for his days with the Reds and the Cubs, couple of seasons with the Nationals as well, where Trey Turner came up and got sent back down and kind of dicked around with Trey Turner in the Nationals organization. So I would hate to see the Mets hire Dusty Baker, but they need to change at manager, it seems. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I was about to say he better get his act straight fast. At that rate, I mean, they've lost quite a few games lately, and getting swept by the Marlins is not pretty to the ownership. I do have to say that. I mean, it just adds on to more trouble for him. As far as getting fired. I mean, I don't see him lasting that much longer anyway. But after that, he's got to be gone.
It certainly feels like it, especially when you went pretty much all in on this team with Jacob deGrom getting his extension this offseason. You had them acquiring Robinson Cano, same with Edwin Diaz. They have a pretty good offense with Peter Alonso, with Michael Conforto. Who else is on that team? Really, Wilson Ramos was another guy they bought this offseason. And so you'd expect this team to be able to win, especially with a rotation of Syndergaard, deGrom. Wheeler isn't a bad 3-4. Obviously, the back of the rotation is not that strong, but this is a team that can compete in the NL East, which no one's really running away with, even though the Phillies are playing very, very well. They're still only 9 games above 500, so not that far ahead of the Mets. Yeah. And it's still in view, and they've got to figure something out because they've got a decent team.
Yeah, they're way more talented than their record shows.
Oh, absolutely, especially with that pitching rotation.
Right, yeah.
So that's this week's storylines. More of the game than we usually do, but I just there was a lot of interesting storylines this weekend. So moving
Yeah,
on.
I think myself.
Moving on, we'll get to the current individual league leaders. Really not much has changed, as you can see here. A lot of it belonging to Cody Bellinger, who even after almost 2 months straight is hitting above 400, which we'll get to. But obviously leader in runs for the 7th week straight. Christian Yelich leads with home runs for his 5th week straight at 19, and we are not even out of May yet, people. Does he have a chance for 50? At this pace he does, but at some point you figure they've got to start pitching around him. The Brewers don't have that scary of a lineup as it's playing out right now, but if guys like Shaw can come back healthy and hit, if Moustakas can hit well, then maybe they pitch around Yelich. But at this point, they don't have a whole lot to be afraid of with that Brewers team, it seems like, consistently at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then a new name that had been added to the RBI total is Cody Bellinger, obviously for his 2nd week straight. And then Josh Bell, surprisingly, has 44 RBIs on the season. That was one I wasn't expecting ever to show up, especially on a Pittsburgh Pirates team that usually isn't known for offense, but he's done very well this year. And then, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was going to say that the Pirates have been doing pretty well considering, in general. So I'm not necessarily surprised to see that name on there because the Pirates were popping for a little while. I think they've kind of fallen off now a little bit. But I was going to say I don't know if you were talking about Cody Bellinger, but eventually he's going to have a rough patch. I mean, I just have to think so.
You've got to figure, because no one, especially in this game nowadays, it's hard to hit even 300. You don't get very many people that do it, but I don't know what it is. I've looked at his stats. I've watched a ton of games because he's just so much fun to watch, but he just has found a way to become that much more impressive. And looking at it real quick, something that I'll bring up, his walk percentage is at 14%, where his career is usually about 11.5%. And do you know what his career strikeout percentage is?
No, I don't.
Right now his career strikeout percentage is 24 or close to 24%. This year on the season, it's only at 14. Like that's a 10% drop in strikeouts.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He's whatever hole he had in his swing, he's definitely corrected, and it's showing for him. And the Dodgers were already a scary team when they had a bunch of guys that would hit solo bombs, but now that you've got him just doing whatever the hell he wants, that team is even more scary. But yeah,
he leads the league in half the freaking offensive stats.
And I can't say that I expected that. I expected maybe a 270 average and 30-something home runs, but not a 400 average after almost 2 months. It's insane to see what he's done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy.
One of the categories he doesn't lead is stolen bases, and that belongs to Adalberto Mondesi with 17 stolen bases. A lot of that's due to the fact that Tim Anderson has really cooled off recently. He's a streaky player. It's bound to happen. And Tim Anderson's still having an excellent year. So moving on to pitching, which required a minimum of 55 innings pitched. A lot of guys are getting up there. Just trying to keep that minimum there, obviously, because you're going to get guys that have thrown 30 innings, 25 innings that may have no ERA, but obviously limited innings really keeps you down there. But one that hasn't been limited is quality starts for Zach Greinke, who currently leads the league at 9. And if I can pull it up here fast enough, I think he's made 10 starts at this point. Maybe he might have actually. He has made, 10 starts, 9 quality. That's an excellent percentage, just absolutely tearing the league apart. And people were worried about him going into the season because of a slight downtick in velocity in spring training. But he's doing what Zach Greinke does, and for a surprisingly decent Arizona Diamondbacks team. And then walks allowed is one that I still can't believe that Hyun-Jin Ryu leads it for the 4th week straight.
I've never heard of.
I've heard of him. I liked watching him pitch. He's a very good pitcher, but the fact that he's found this pinpoint control is insane because I mean, you look at some of the top guys in innings pitched or quality starts, they're already in the double digits. I mean, Zach Greinke's sitting at 8 in 64 innings, but Hyunjin Ryu in 59 innings only has 4.
And he's been leading it for a month.
Yeah.
Not like it's been a week, it's a month.
I think he's added, let's see, if I pull it up here, in the last month, he's thrown, where did he just go? He's thrown 39 innings with 2 walks in the last month. It's mind-boggling. I don't know how. I mean, most great pitchers still have double digits at this point for walks in a month, but he's found a way to just be excellent.
Yeah, that's something else. Like I said, considering that I've never heard of the dude. I have not.
Well, I'm not surprised. It's a West Coast team. You're on the East Coast,
true.
And it's hard to watch Dodgers, Angels, athletics games when they start at 9 o'clock at night on Central Time, at least. So
yeah, and on the East Coast it's 10:30, so it's like you're going to be up till 2 o'clock in the morning if you're watching those games.
Exactly. And the only other one that's different is Hyunjin Ryu leading the league in ERA, and obviously Garrett Cole still leads the league in strikeouts. He's having an excellent year. The ERA is a little bit higher than most people would want at, if I can pull it up here, year to date, 3.56, but the whip is under 1.05, so he's having an excellent year. I'm sure the ERA will come down at some point, but with the new ball, pitchers have been saying it's slippery again. It's hard to control. They're getting a lot of movement, but obviously walks and runs have definitely upticked for guys like Scherzer and Cole. And Chris Sale's still above a 4.0 ERA. It's expected, but these guys are adjusting back to what seems to, with the ball changing again. It's going to happen. Guys will adjust and hopefully figure it out in the second half.
Yeah, I agree there. The thing that kills me is the last one, Kirby Yates. 6 weeks in a row, and I traded him to Colorado.
I mean, it's also a relief pitcher, though. I mean, they don't, and especially at 33 or something like that, they don't hold a lot of value all the time. Nobody knew he was going to have that many saves, and I think he's definitely slowed down over the recent times because that Padres team has definitely hit a skid recently.
Right? Yeah. It's like really, and it's not saying that I don't regret trading them, because one category one category is not gonna stop me from making a trade. It's just funny, you know.
Oh yeah, especially I figured he'd have a good year, but not something like this where he's got 17 saves.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
so moving on to the injured list, from what I remember, there was a decent amount, and a lot of it was just 10-day injured lists. There's nothing really brutal as of recently. We'll just kind of gloss over some of it. Atlanta Braves unfortunately lost Ender Inciarte to a lumbar strain for 10 days. Should be back shortly after that. They've said it's not anything too bad. Chicago White Sox are dealing with Travis Shaw getting sent down to the injured list for his wrist. Eloy Jimenez has returned, so that's a big name coming back for that offense. Rockies, unfortunately, dealing with a George Springer back who is day-to-day. Big offensive piece for them. Actually, I'm going to check as I go here for the Rockies to see if I think he has – nope, he's still on the bench at this point, still injured with that back. The Astros
take some breaks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's bound to happen. Springer's having an excellent year, but it looked like he hurt his back on a certain swing. And so hopefully the Astros can get him back soon. They definitely need his offense with Altuve off on the injured list as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mentioning the Houston Astros, you've got Scott Kingery, who's finally returned, a name that they took a chance on, and it's performed well for them so far, as he is hitting, where did he go? There we go. 359 on the season. Not too many counting stats, but the ratios are there. And eventually, especially on a good Phillies team, those counting stats will go up. The home runs maybe won't tick up a whole lot, but the stolen bases, runs, and RBIs definitely should. For your Miami Marlins, your biggest one was Aaron Sanchez dealing with a blister on his middle finger on his right hand. something that he's dealt with for a while. Every year, it seems like he's almost like the young Rich Hill, always dealing with blisters.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I'm not worried about that one too much. He'll be back soon, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. And then the Twins obviously lost Elvis Andrus to a hamstring 10-day injured list stint for him. Hopefully, Mike Clevenger should be back soon to help that pitching staff. Two names between the Yankees and the Cardinals, Kenta Maeda and Nelson Cruz, both hitting the 10-day injured list, unfortunately. Not huge blows to those teams, but still do make a difference. And then the Blue Jays have kind of hit a wall here with Javier Baez, Yasiel Puig, and David Price. Baez and Puig obviously day-to-day, and then Price did return, had a decent start the other night. So maybe this is the turnaround the Blue Jays needed with David Price returning.
Yeah, they've held their ground. I mean, considering with the Blue Jays, with what's been going on and everything, he's held his ground in the standings in general.
Yeah, surprisingly, Price with a 3.29 ERA this year, way better than last year. And what killed him last year was the Yankees. So if I'm actually going to check real quick. He has yet to face the Yankees this year. And I know that was his kryptonite last year. Maybe he'll face them later in the year. I think they play a lot in the second half between the Red Sox and the Yankees. Mm-hmm. So maybe that makes a difference. But so far, I mean, David Price is holding his own and is performing really, really well for a guy that's getting up there in age. Nobody knew how he was going to age and if it was going to work well, but 33 and he's still performing. So,
yeah. Who knows how much longer? It probably won't be too much. I mean, eventually players start falling off. But
oh yeah, and especially pitchers.
Not bad. That 33, that's not bad at all.
So getting to Fire and Ice, this one we actually had a lot of different names. I try and mix it up. Obviously, you're going to see some names consistently just because they performed well over a 1 week span, so it keeps them up there. But some definite new names this week. Starting with first baseman Josh Bell, who we mentioned earlier in the show with leading the league in RBIs. And this last 14 days has been the biggest thing for him. 11 runs, 6 home runs, and 19 RBIs over the past 14 days. And the Pirates haven't played every day, so that makes it that much more impressive. Almost hitting above 400, and OPS over 1.3. He's been absolutely just on fire, tearing everyone apart compared to, I mean, what he was the past few. Obviously had a good rookie season, but last year was an absolute disappointment with not even hitting 20 home runs. And this year he's just killing the hell out of the ball. And I'm pulling him up now because I want to see. His biggest thing was always ground ball rates. He was pounding the ball into the ground way too often. And pulling it up here.
He's a big reason why the Pirates are where they're at right now.
Yeah, and he's lowered his ground ball rate by 9%. So he's putting the ball more in fly. He's getting a better line drive rate. So he's just hitting the ball hard and spraying it to all fields. So he's a big reason that Pirates team has been really good, especially with Marte struggling recently and Corey Dickerson being hurt as well. Now another name. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing. I agree with what you said about the Pirates. Yeah.
Another bounce back name has been Chris Bryant as well. I mean, you can see his stats here. 7 home runs in the past 14 days, almost an RBI per day. Really good ratios as well. I mean, what do you think Chris Bryant so far this season, Chris?
I haven't honestly paid too much attention to Chris Bryant, so I'm not going to comment too much. Act like I know what I'm talking about. So I'll let you talk about him.
He's been surprisingly good. I mean, he seems to finally be healthy, and he's been a good leader for that Cubs offense. And he's up at 11 home runs on the season, on pace for about, just doing quick math, just over 30. So he's looking more like his 2016 self, a little bit less average, but the OBP is there. He's looking great. And it's something that the Cubs definitely needed, especially in this recent hot stretch.
Yeah.
And now 2 names I never expected to see as hot pitchers are Brandon Woodruff and Martin Perez. Brandon Woodruff of the Milwaukee Brewers, of course, and Martin Perez of the Twins, which the Twins have been absolutely excellent in all facets of the game this year. I don't know how. I don't know why. They've been one of the best offenses and surprisingly one of the best rotations.
That's something I didn't expect. I'll be straight up honest right there. I did not expect the Twins to be where they're at right now.
They're 5.5 games up over the Indians. They have 31 wins. They are a game behind the Astros.
Yeah. It's crazy. That is, I mean, really, they're better than, or their record's better than the Yankees, the Red Sox, and all. I mean, a lot of the good teams. So I mean, it's something shocking. I mean, but I'm sure they'll have a patch where they fall down a little bit. Surely they will.
Oh, absolutely. And I wonder how much Nelson Cruz helped them as well. That just acquisition too.
Yeah.
But the Woodruff has looked absolutely excellent. Sparkling ERA of 1.35, 1K per inning, limiting the walks, which has definitely been the biggest contributing factor for him. Being able to keep guys off base, giving them free passes is a big deal. And the same goes for Martin Perez, a guy that pitched in Texas for a long time. It definitely seems like the change of scenery has been great for him. And if anybody remembers, I think it was this off season, he had a freak injury. If I can remember, I think it was either this off season or last off season. No, not Zach Martin. I want Martin Perez. Oh, I only typed Martin Perez injury, but he had an injury with a bull. And it was last year. He suffered a freak injury on his ranch where one of the bulls came charging at him, and that was with Texas. But obviously we know Texas is a bandbox. It's good for home runs. It's great for hitters like Joey Gallo. But, I mean, Martin Perez heading to Target Field and heading to obviously a weaker division has helped him a ton, and he's taking advantage of it so far, keeping an ERA under 2 in the past 14 days. Now, moving to the ice side of things, a lot of names that I wouldn't have expected as well. Nicholas Castellanos for the Detroit Tigers, hitting close to the Mendoza line, terrible OPS, only 2 home runs in the past 14 days.
Now, how did we know that you'd have a Marlins player under ice?
Wait, what? Who? Who do you have that's on ice?
Hayward.
Oh, yeah, I did see that one. I mean, he's hitting 113 over the past 14 days, and it's Hayward has always been one of those guys that I don't understand. He's built like a brick shit house. He's strong as all get out. He's 6'5", but he never looks comfortable when he swings. I don't know why. He at times just looks like his top half is doing one thing and his bottom half is off in another land doing something else. It never looks connected.
It almost makes you wonder how he's made it so long on the Cubs.
Because they paid him a ton of money and they had to. He looks so good for one season with the Cardinals, and all of a sudden he gets to the Cubs and he's been trash. He's had some decent stretches where he plays hot, but it usually is like a 260 average and a 750 OPS over 14 days. But
yeah, and no other team's going to pay as much as the Cubs paid him.
No, they backed into that one, and it sucks for them. It hurt them bad.
Yeah, and it affected them for years. It's not like it was a 1-year effect. It affected for years because you signed that multi-year contract and you're there.
Yeah, and there's no way that you're moving that. I mean, I heard so many Cubs fans this offseason going, oh, they can move him. They'll be able to pay off half his money and get him to somebody. It's like nobody wants him, though. Nobody wants to play him. He's terrible.
Right.
But one guy that's not terrible that is on this list is Trevor Bauer. For whatever reason, he has been absolutely garbage these last 2 weeks with an ERA north of 7, whip over 1.3, over 1.4 even. And the biggest thing has been the long ball, which he allowed another one tonight against the Oakland Athletics, not included in this 4 home runs over the past 14 days. And I don't know if it's the new ball, if it's something with his control. Obviously, his walks are definitely up from last year. It seems like he's having issues there, but the strikeouts are there. So at least he's getting that. but it's hard to start him. It's hard to watch him when he's struggling like this after what we saw in 2018.
Yeah, hopefully he'll turn around.
And that the same can be said for Mike Fultonevich as well, a guy that really broke out in 2018 and now in the last 14 days is just allowing runs left and right, has almost as many walks as he does strikeouts, and he's not even getting a strikeout per inning, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That was one
Wow.
That was one regression I didn't see happening for Fultonevich. I know he had some struggles with the walks last year, but nothing terrible. And at this point, he's just getting hit around.
Right, yeah. No, that's crazy considering and as a Braves fan, I heard his name a lot, and especially when just talking about around like Twitter and everywhere you follow Braves stuff, and he was good for a while, and then or pretty much most of the year last year, and I don't know what this year all of a sudden. I guess it's just one of them. You have them rough patches. I mean, you do. I mean, it's part of all sports, I guess.
Well, and especially
baseball. I mean, with it being so long, I mean, you're gonna have a couple of weeks that could be horrible.
Well, and especially the fact that Braves fans going into this year were so confident in their pitching rotation. I know a lot of guys wanted them to sign a guy like Dallas Keuchel or whatnot. You needed some veterans in that staff, but a lot of people also said, hey, we've got Fultonevich, we've got Newcomb. These guys performed well in 2018, and they're obviously more veteran than they were last year, but
not so far.
Yeah, he hasn't looked good. He was supposed to be the ace, and it's been brutal so far. So we'll see if he can turn it around.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully he can. We'd like to see the Braves win the division again, but
it'll be tough.
It's looking tougher. It's tougher than it was last year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Phillies are good. The Mets should be good. You've got the Nationals, who should be as well, with that rotation of Scherzer, Strasburg, and Corbin. You'd think they're going to find it together at some point as well.
I just hope the Mets are bad for a little while longer.
It's possible.
Another 30 games.
But something that isn't long for the rest of this is prospects getting called up. It feels like this is the year of the prospects. I know we've kind of mentioned it before, but I just feel like all these names we've been waiting on are finally getting their chance. And 3 of the names that have debuted recently are Keston Hiura of the Brewers, Austin Riley of the aforementioned Braves, and shortstop Brendan Rodgers of the Colorado Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the only one that's gotten off to a hot start so far would be Austin Riley. Hiura is still hitting below 200. He did hit his first career home run. Brendan Rodgers, of course, is getting dicked around by the Colorado Rockies. Real team, not Keith, of course. I know Keith would bring him up if he absolutely wanted to. But Austin Riley is hitting over 409 he's hitting 409 in 22 at-bats, already has 3 home runs and 6 RBIs on the season. He's absolutely raking, and whether he stays in Atlanta is something we'll have to see, because he's a third baseman. He's a corner infield. They're playing him in the outfield right now, only because of that's where they have the spot. He's played 1 game at third, 5 in left field. Not great defensively, but he does provide a lot of offense opportunities. So out of these 3, who would you be most excited for, Chris?
I would probably say Austin Riley, really, out of all 3, because like you said, he's shown the most so far. But I don't think either one of these are, I mean, nothing super fantastic has been seen at least out of these 3 minor players.
Yeah,
now.
I'm excited for the long term of Keston Hiura, because he's very similar to – he's a great contact guy, some decent power, a little bit of speed. Maybe he has a few seasons of like 5 stolen bases or 4, but he's going to be a guy that can challenge for 300 every year. But so far, he's struggling. He's not walking a whole lot, striking out at almost 30%. But that's part of the adjustment to the big leagues.
It'll take time. It'll take time for sure.
Austin Riley has been a hell of a lot of fun. So if you're not watching Braves games, you should definitely jump on those and check those out for sure.
Oh, absolutely. With all the
So,
the young talent they have.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Between Acuna and Riley and uh, damn, I'm trying to think of who else is there.
You know
Ozzy
what?
Albies, of course.
I had a brain. I had a brain like when you said that. I was trying to think of the name. I was like, wow,
Yeah, and I mean they've got so many young pitchers, just none of them have
that's just
really
to name a
stepped up
couple.
on it. Yeah, and that team is absolutely filled with youth. Maybe Craig Kimbrell or Dallas Keuchel signs with one at them at some point because God knows they could use it. Their pitching is awful, both starting and relief. They need some help for sure.
Right? Yeah.
So let's move on to week 6, and I'm sure you'll get some shots in here. I'm excited about
Oh, I'm
it.
sure I will. I was waiting on the first one.
We'll start with the Chicago White Sox taking on the St. Louis Cardinals and Jared. Jared is looking to have a better year than he did last year when he came in second place. I know he wants to challenge for that championship belt. He wants to get those opportunities, and it was a good week for him this week to try and prove where he can sit. Those Cardinals have been a little bit inconsistent. A lot of it is because of the selling of Bryce Harper, I think, relying on younger players such as Rafael Devers, Gleyber Torres. So you're going to have the spikes and the drops. You're going to have a lot of it. It's exciting, though. And unfortunately, this last week, it started out really, really close between the White Sox and the Cardinals. The final scoreboard, though, ended with 10 wins for the Chicago White Sox compared to the Cardinals' 2. And that brings the White Sox up to 63 wins, where the Cardinals are sitting at 41, still 3 games above 500.
Still waiting on somebody to step their game up.
Well, for once, the Cardinals did not end with any ties in any category. So that was probably the biggest surprise out of that matchup there, was the Cardinals finally had a week where they didn't get a tie, at least one.
They tied every other week.
It seems like it.
But I thought that was so serious. I was like, I don't know what they tied every other week.
But I mean, looking at it, it really did come down to the last few days because counting stat wise, the White Sox were really neck and neck. And I know you saw it. I think early in the week, Jared and I were tied 5-5-2.
Yep.
Really just bouncing back and forth. But I thought those 2 Vlad homers that I missed early in the week were really going to count. And in the end, it didn't so much on the offensive side. Just my team took advantage of opportunities a little bit better when it came to counting stats. But I mean, the Cardinals pitching staff had such a good week, and it sucks for him to lose that kind of week overall because he had a better ERA, great strikeout to walk ratio, and a good amount of quality starts. 5 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look, I think our record so far this year is probably 9, and that really isn't a big difference between 5 and 9 or 6 and 9. It's kind of luck of the draw when it comes to quality starts, because sometimes you get to that 3rd out of the 5th or 6th inning and you just can't get that last one to get the quality start. But
yeah, really, you walked away, like you said, you walked away with it with the counting stats, the runs batted in, and mainly those 2 stats were the ones you ran away with. Just everything else was at least fairly close coming up to Sunday. It just didn't work out in the Cardinals' favor.
Absolutely.
Happens. Ask the Marlins.
It's happened plenty of times too. And if I'm actually going to pull up real quick Sunday. Yeah, that was actually Sunday played out fairly even with the Cardinals. It must have been Saturday then. But yeah, Saturday was where it really came. It really took away. But team MVP, like we talked about earlier in the show, Josh Bell, team MVP, 10 RBIs this past week, along with 4 home runs, just absolutely killing the ball. His hard percentage was up to 53%, I think, overall on the season. Just crushing everything he's given. And for the Cardinals, I can't ever remember the word I'm looking for. Counterpart. There it is. I actually remembered it. Josh Bell's counterpart in Freddie Freeman ended up being the Cardinals' team MVP for this week with 4 home runs, 6 RBIs, and an average close to 400. He meant everything to the Braves this past week, along with the fantasy Cardinals.
Yeah, absolutely no surprise on either one of these. Josh Bell, he's already gotten the recognition that if he wasn't a team MVP, we don't know who would have been. And then Freddie Freeman's just Freddie Freeman.
It was close for me. I almost wanted to do co-MVPs for my team between him and Shane Bieber because I have Bieber fever and I kind of hate myself for saying it. But this kid has been so good this last week with, I think, 25 strikeouts in 17 innings. No, 15 innings, 21 strikeouts, no walks. It was really close between those two just because of what Bieber did the other day with 15 strikeouts. Excellent performance by him, but it is what it is. Josh Bell deserved it. So moving on to the other first place team in the league, we've got the Colorado Rockies looking to keep their advantage going as they face the Minnesota Twins and Mac. I know Mac has been silent. I know he's still with us. I did talk to him recently. School is ending. I'm glad I don't have to worry about school anymore. I mean, kind of do through my son, but I don't have to worry about homework or finals or any of that. So
it's nothing like if you were going to school.
Oh, absolutely. I wish Mac the best on his finals. Unfortunately, the final score of his matchup this week against the Colorado Rockies did not play out the way he would like it to, as he only took 3 wins compared to the Colorado Rockies' 9 wins.
Yeah, that's a whopping.
And really, it didn't. It kind of got away from the Twins early on, unfortunately, with the Colorado Rockies, who do now have 55 wins on the season compared to the Minnesota Twins 36. So I'll let you take a look at this one and kind of break it down.
Well, really, I would say, one second. For this one, everything, honestly, I'm just really going by the stats that you have on here because this one I didn't look at because very early it was a blowout and it really didn't change as far as categories since then. But going over what stats we do have, the counting stats were fairly close, honestly. But it really got when you look at when it got carried away was over here at pitching. The saves and holds, that was Colorado in a wide margin. Strikeouts, Colorado got that one pretty well. Really, to me, that's where his, I guess, main problems were. Talking about the Twins, wouldn't you agree? For the most part.
Oh yeah, and that was his biggest concern. I mean, obviously, home runs is going to fluctuate.
Quite honestly, this is pretty bad considering on the pitching side. On the counting stats, everything stayed pretty close, and even the Twins took some of those, like the runs batted in. He was close on runs, home runs. He was fairly close. I would consider 4 pretty close. Oh yeah, he almost took stolen bases too. So yeah, it was close. So it was close.
It really was. I think a lot of it came from the fact that Hunter Dozier was in a slump this last week. Same with Tim Anderson, both hitting below 220. But other than that, I mean, his offense carried him really well. And unfortunately, the biggest thing with the Minnesota Twins has been the inconsistency of their pitching staff. Guys like Chris Archer, German Marquez have been kind of explosive, and they can either have really good games or really bad games. And I mean, the Twins, even though the scoreboard doesn't show that it was close, it really was. I mean, even if you look at walks allowed and strikeouts, those really weren't far apart. It was more the ratios, and that's going to happen some weeks. But if you keep yourself close in the counting stats and pitching, you should have a pretty decent week.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. And it shows here. I mean, it really does. Because when I first saw this on like Wednesday, I was like, "Did Mac set his lineup?" and then once you look at the stats, it's like, yeah, he did set it. It's just tough luck, you know.
Yeah, and it's bound to happen. Unfortunately, the Rockies did get. Thank God for one start from Rich Hill. He is their team MVP for this week simply because he went 6 innings pitched. 10 strikeouts, which are those 10 strikeouts more than the Twins had. If not for that one start, I mean, this matchup would have been much different. You would have had a bit higher of an ERA. Obviously, that wouldn't have changed much, but you would have had less strikeouts for the Rockies, less quality starts. you would have put the Twins right in the mix for everything there. And then for the Twins, like we talked about, their offense was great, and it was led by, surprisingly, outfielder Byron Buxton, a guy that seems to have bounced around between the minors and the majors, and this year he seems like he's finally putting it together. The power isn't all there with only 4 home runs in almost a quarter season of play, as he's got 146 at bats. So he's on pace for 16 home runs, but he's got 8 stolen bases. So we're looking at a possible 15 home runs, 30 stolen base season for him while hitting at a decent average of 267. So he was great, and I know the Twins were reluctant to give up on him, both fantasy and real life, and he is proving it so far this year.
Right, and that's great to see too.
So moving to the Bronx after being in Minnesota, like to get some of that more active play with the New York Yankees taking on the LA Dodgers, 2 big name franchises taking each other on here. And the Dodgers, kind of like the Cardinals, have been up and down at times. They've had a team that they've been rebuilding little by little. They made more moves over the offseason to sell than to buy. But they've made some good pickups in Christian Walker, Rowdy Tellez, really trying to supplement this roster wherever they can. And it paid off this week. Obviously, we know the Yankees have been hurt. We didn't get many updates on them this week, but they're still missing guys like Didi Gregorius, Giancarlo Stanton, Luis Severino. Their team is really hurting. And it showed once again, until those Yankees get healthy, it's really going to hurt, as the Dodgers took 8 wins this week, pushing them up to 2nd place in the division, actually, for the Jackie Robinson division at 44 wins, while the New York Yankees have officially dropped to last place with only 24 wins on the season.
Yeah, with the downfall of Jared and his Cardinals, or with them being inconsistent, the Dodgers have gotten a pretty good I would say pretty good lead up, but he's gotten a little bit of lead on the Cardinals.
Yeah, he's 3 games ahead of the Cardinals. Actually, 4, according to if you look at games behind. 4 games ahead of him, and a lot of it's just the fact that the Dodgers have been able to be a little bit more consistent. Schedule luck plays into it a bit as well, but the Dodgers are taking advantage of a division that started off pretty slow between the Cardinals and the Blue Jays, especially the Blue Jays, who are expected to compete this year. They still are, but we'll talk about them here in a bit. Let's look at the Dodgers and the Yankees.
The Dodgers didn't really dominate the counting stats, but it was a wide enough margin where it wasn't really close for the most part. 44 runs to 32 runs, 40 runs batted in to 28 runs batted in. But that's what you expect. That's what I expect out of the Yankees being so injured right now. 4 stolen bases to 1. Nothing out of the ordinary, in my opinion. Where I see the little bit of the struggles for the Dodgers, not against the Yankees, but it's when it comes to pitching. Pitching's a little off, with 3 quality starts to 5. I'm basically setting the stat. The Yankees pitching isn't that great either, but then that's why I'm saying that the Dodgers they're going to have some problems going up against some of the better teams like your White Sox and a couple of others. But anyway, they got a pretty good one on the walks. They dominated walks 32-20. Strikeouts was tied. I guess that was the tie of the week.
Well, don't forget. Remember, you don't want walks, so
you don't count walks. I can't ever keep up which ones count. I can't ever keep up which ones are counted into the categories.
No, walks do count. You want the lower end of the spectrum there, though. You want to try and keep walks out. So the Yankees won in walks, and I feel like they got a little unlucky there with the fact that, you look at the difference in WHIP where it was 1.23 to 1.30. The Yankees overall, if sabermetrically, should have had a lower ERA just based on the fact that they gave up less walks, less hits, but they just they got unlucky when it comes down to it. And looking at their stats real quick, The biggest one that blew them up was Nick Margevicius, who had a 13 ERA on the week, along with Matthew Boyd, who had a 6 ERA. So really, 2 starts probably out of this whole thing blew him up badly.
Right.
I mean, obviously, he had a better strikeout to walk ratio, had the opportunity to take a couple more pitching categories very easily. So it comes down to, I mean, a couple of hits there, a couple of hits here, and just the timing of them as well.
Yeah, but all in all, I think the Yankees played better than I thought they would have. I thought it would have been like, I thought the Dodgers would get 10 categories or 9. They played a little better than I thought, but still bad.
Oh, yeah. And
There's no way to put it. I mean, there's no other way to put it, but I mean, it was pretty good job competing considering the injuries.
oh, yeah. And I mean, neither team had a great average or OPS, but it is what it is. You deal with what you can. I will be excited to see what the Yankees can do once they get Scooter Gennett, Didi Gregorius, and Giancarlo Stanton back. The fact that Stanton's still out is weird, considering that it originally was, I think, an arm injury. Now it's a shoulder, and it's the fact that he's been out this long. He was only supposed to be out a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of weird, and it kind of makes you wonder: is he going to be? It kind of makes me wonder: is he going to be injury prone? Hopefully not.
I wouldn't think so, but once they get those big bats in there, I think the Yankees offense will look better, both real life and fantasy. And team MVP for the Dodgers goes to Mike Moustakas. I had trouble picking this one out just because no one really stuck out, but Moustakas obviously still getting some playing time for the Milwaukee Brewers. He hasn't had the best of seasons, but he hit, if I can find it here, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs on the week. Really, he was the only one that stood out in terms of it. As you can see, no one really stood out on the pitching staff. And then for the Yankees, Chris Sale seems to be back in form. He had 12 innings pitched this last week, but 27 strikeouts. I think 17 of them coming in one game. 17 strikeouts in one game against Colorado, and then 10 against the Houston Astros. Not the ERA you want at almost 4, but the WHIP was below 1.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Wow. I mean, that's excellent. The fact that
that's
he struck
pretty
out.
wild. I mean, that's something you don't hear that quite often.
No, I mean, I know he was chasing history the one game with 17 strikeouts. I was hoping they would let him go out there and pitch, but he had already thrown 108. I would have loved to have seen him hit that 20 strikeout mark.
Right, yeah.
So let's get on to your Marlins. I'll let you talk about this one since obviously you dealt with your team this last week. You were able to give us the full-on experience of it for this one.
Yeah, the Marlins dominated. I mean, there's not too much to say. They dominated 8 categories to 3, I think, in one tie. Now, granted, I'm not gonna. I can't sit here and say that my team's perfect, but that's a pretty good sign against the Braves team. That's pretty darn good. I do have to say that.
And I set his lineup for him. I've been setting it for him the last 2.5 weeks, so it's not like it was a team that was just gone.
Right, and that's really the only reason I can have confidence, because had his lineup not been set, I can't really say anything because there's really no dominating. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty impressed. I'm hoping for keep on rolling. But anyway, with records, the Braves go to 39, 40, and 5 ties, and I go to improved record of 26, 54, and 4.
You're inching that much closer to the 500 mark, little by little. You did jump from 10th place to 9th place, so you are moving up in the world. It is excellent to see.
Exactly. Now there are some categories here that I would have liked to take in big, like the runs. I was 1 run away from at least tying. I would have rather a tie than a loss, but I can't complain too much. I did pretty well on home runs, 23 to 15.
I mean, the fact that you lost runs, even though you had 8 more home runs, is kind of odd. That's really hard to do.
I did think about that. I was like, how do I lose runs? how did I lose runs? Like, but I guess it happens. The stolen bases I sucked at 7-0. That was my worst stat of all of them.
I mean, that's bound to happen. Some teams are going to be built on power, some are speed, some are a mix. So you get a balance of it, but it all depends on how you want to build it.
Right, yeah. And as far as pitching goes, we tied in quality starts. I didn't do quite as well in pitching, I have to admit, I, which is one of my concerns at the beginning of the season. Um, was not the main concern, but it was part of. I was kind of concerned about it. He beat me in walks, 25-14.
No, you won that one. Remember, you won less walks. You won that one.
Yeah,
You actually dominated on the pitching side of it this week.
Yeah.
Compared to what he had.
Except, quality starts didn't do that great, but everything else was actually, this week was pretty well, except for saves and holds and, like I say, quality starts.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't expect saving and holds come Tuesday when he had 2.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it.
I mean, he's got Josh Hader out there. He's got Sean Doolittle and Sir Anthony Dominguez. But it's bound to happen. Saves and holds. Once again, it's more of a roster construction, how you want to build it. But the fact that, I mean, you had a very good strikeout to walk ratio, over 4-1 in that category.
Yeah.
About league average WHIP and ERA. So, I mean, if you're at least able to hit league average, you'll be fine. You won't have to worry too much about it because you'll at least be competitive week after week. And that's all it is. It's a crapshoot sometimes with head-to-head because, I mean, you look at the Braves, they had Rizzo, Robinson Cano, and Rhys Hoskins, all 3 very good hitters, hit below 200 this last week. But then you have Eduardo Escobar as the team MVP with 3 home runs and 10 RBIs, which this is the second time I've had to use his name as a team MVP. And it's not even on a bad team. You have a lot of big names, and
really.
I don't get it.
They just had down weeks.
The fact that Eduardo Escobar is the team MVP it blows my mind every time I've had to put it in there, especially when you have guys like Christian Yelich in there.
Yeah, as talented as the Braves are and have many big names. I do agree with you. It is surprising to see that name out of all of the names that they have.
And the same kind of goes for you, where you had Carlos Santana as your team MVP in my mind with 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 5 runs scored, was really a big difference maker in terms of offense for your team. Because it seemed like everyone on your team hit a home run this week. No one had a spectacular week. I almost gave it to CJ Cron, who had 3 home runs on the week, but Carlos Santana just a couple more counting stats, a little bit better of an average and OPS. So it was real close between him and Cron.
Right, yeah. He was one of them guys at the beginning of the season that I had to count on to hopefully, at least from here, at least this is a start to a better record.
Yeah, and I mean,
had a rough start, but
I gotta say, Carlos Santana has definitely outperformed what I expected him to do, especially going back to Cleveland. Right. He's hitting almost 300 on the season with almost a 900 OPS, which would put him in the top 50 hitters probably at this point on the season. So you can't argue with that performance early on.
No, not at all. It's pretty impressive.
So moving on to the last one for week 7, this would be the Houston Astros taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. And I can almost never get a read on the Houston Astros and what they are, because a good example right now is they are down they're only winning 2 categories to 9 over compared to the Minnesota Twins right now, who is their matchup for this week, which we'll get into. But then by the end of the week, they seem to tie it all together and play really close matchups. They never really get blown out. Compared to what we thought they might be, I know I projected them to be last in the entire league. So far, that's been wrong.
Yeah, but they're falling off. They've fallen off since the last probably 3 weeks.
Well, they have, but they still tend to play close games such as this one with 5 wins compared to 7 losses. They've definitely fallen off from what they did earlier in the season.
Because if you had looked at them in week 4, you would have thought they're a playoff team. Right now, they don't look like a playoff team at all. I mean, really, because it started about a month ago since they played the Dodgers. They lost 4 categories to 8. Ever since then, they haven't really gotten it together. But they've, like you said, they've stayed close, which is impressive to me because if you look on on Wednesday, usually they're getting dominated 10-2, and then somehow it's like right here 7-5-7. That's not bad at all.
Exactly, and really the Blue Jays have played about 500 baseball, as their record says: 40 wins, 40 losses, and 4 ties. And then the Houston Astros are dipping below that 500 mark, like you said, 30 wins and 47 losses on the season. So let's break this one down because it really is crazy the fact that the Blue Jays sit where they are, and both of these teams are kind of a surprise, both in different aspects at this point. Because the Blue Jays were expected to be up at the top of their division, at least I know I did, and then the Houston Astros I expected to be more at the bottom, which they're sitting at now. But overall, they've played some pretty decent baseball. They're able to at least be competitive.
Right, yeah.
And you can see that here as they hit more home runs than the Toronto Blue Jays. They didn't take advantage of scoring opportunities when it comes to runs or RBIs. And their batting average was only 206 on the week. And a lot of that is just the fact of it's all or nothing with the team for the most part.
Really, this is in counting stats. It was off. Actually, really, the whole thing, pitching and counting stats, it was just off and on. One of these teams was very good in one, and then they sucked in the other. Like, look at the pitching stats. I mean, staves and holds. The Houston Astros had 9-3 for the Blue Jays, and then you look at walks allowed. Blue Jays dominated there, 42-22. I mean, it was really just off and on stats, but it really wasn't. In some of these stats, most of these stats, it wasn't that close.
No, it really wasn't. It seemed like, yeah. I mean, you look at batting average and OPS; those were vastly different. And the fact that, I mean, strikeouts, 101 strikeouts for the Astros compared to 63 for the Blue Jays. It's a big difference considering how close the ERAs were at that point.
But I do have to give credit. Strikeouts was probably the biggest surprise. 101-63.
I know. And thinking about how the Astros really weren't built on pitching going into the season, but I'm actually pulling up their matchup here. And the reason that they were able to have so many was Aaron Nola compiled 15, Tanner Roark with 13, and Yusei Kikuchi actually had 11 on the week with 12 innings pitched. It just seemed like everyone was able to be fairly competitive and able to get a few more strikeouts than they usually do. The Astros team is really interesting just because they've had some guys that weren't expected to be great. Joe Musgrove is a great example of that, as he is the team MVP for this week. An ERA right around 2 with 9 strikeouts in 13 innings. Both quality starts, as he performed very well this week. And then for the Toronto Blue Jays, you have team MVP Anthony Rendon, who seems to be consistently every week for them. I love the guy. He's not anything flashy, but he's just absolutely consistent. And the Blue Jays need him to remain there until guys like Miguel Cabrera, Manny Machado, Will Myers, and Bryce Harper can step up and perform the way they should. I mean, it's been a brutal season for those few players there.
There's 2 consistently good players are the team MVPs today.
Yeah.
On these 2. That's all. I mean, that's all there really is to it on these 2 at least. But yeah, I mean, if Kevin keeps his lineup set and all that, he'll be good. I think he'll make it.
Yeah, he's got an excitingly weird team to watch because he's got Aaron Nola, who is supposed to be good, who hasn't been great so far this season, but his pitching staff is better than you'd think. I mean, a guy like Spencer Turnbull is a name that no one really knew going into the season, and he's got a 2.68 ERA. You've got Joe Musgrove, who's pitching very well. You've got Wade Miley, who's been great for the Astros for the most part in limiting runs. And it's funny that you have these lesser-known guys and even a name like Lucas Giolito, 3.35 ERA on the season with 50 strikeouts in 43 innings.
Right.
A name that no one expected, but he's put together a pretty decently deep pitching staff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You got it right there.
So let's move on to this next week. And I didn't update it. God damn it. I forgot to change the week number. It's actually week 8. I know. It's the one thing I skip every other week, it feels like. Every other week.
And then you update it you update it week 9.
Yeah, because I'll remember. I guarantee you I will next week. So mentioning the Houston Astros, we should do them first. Hosting the Minnesota Twins down in the Lone Star State. I kind of want to get your feel on this one because, like we talked about, the Astros are a very weird team. They've been good, they've been bad, they're kind of up and down, and they have some weird names performing well for them. Whereas the Minnesota Twins are based mostly on offense. They've had some struggles with pitching so far. Which one do you think takes this matchup this week?
I think this one's going to be super interesting and close. Maybe like one of like last week when we had the Dodgers and Twins playing, where neither one of them played that great. I think it's going to be one of those type of weeks for these two teams. But this is tough. I'm going to take the Houston Astros just because the Twins, I don't know. It's just something about that team. They just haven't been playing that well lately. And I'm going to take the Houston Astros in this one.
I ended up taking the Astros as well. I just have a feeling. I know the Minnesota Twins' real-life offense has been excellent, and a lot of it is led by Eddie Rosario and Byron Buxton. So he's relying a lot on that. Surprisingly, Mac hasn't called up Austin Riley yet. He's not forced to for another while, but, I mean, if you get him in that offense – yeah, I mean, over Hunter Dozier, even though he's had a great season so far, probably even over Brian Anderson, who would definitely be a substantial upgrade. It might make a difference, but I like the Houston Astros this week. I just have a feeling that Castellanos will get back into it. He'll start hitting well. Andrew Benintendi is bound to bounce back at some point. And, I mean, that pitching staff has been surprisingly consistent and performing pretty well. Before we move on, I do want to say, just looking at the Astros lineup, I am not for Kevin's sake, but for the sake that I've always hated Kyle Schwarber, I am so glad he sucks this season. So glad he sucks.
And it's looking like one of those weeks for Kevin again. He's down 2 to, I mean, granted, it's only Tuesday, but he's down 2 categories to 9.
Yeah, and
I didn't expect that.
I guarantee you by the end of the week, he'll be sitting somewhere around 5 wins, right there in the thick of things, sitting around that 500 mark.
I just didn't like what I saw against the Twins against the Rockies last week for the Twins. That's really made me them taking the Houston Astros, but I don't know. It's just one of the feelings I get that the Astros are going to win.
Oh, absolutely. I don't blame you, and I like the Astros this week.
But like I said, like we said, it's going to be super close. It'll be 5 categories to 7, 7 to 5. That's what I'm thinking.
I like it. So moving on from one big state to another, we're bouncing over to California, where the LA Dodgers will host the Colorado Rockies, a battle of the NL West, obviously battle of the Jackie Robinson division in our league. And this is a number 1 versus number 2 team right now. Who is your favorite for this week, Chris?
Oh, I'm going to take the Rockies. This is similar to the last one that I said about the Twins. I did not like what I saw from the Dodgers as a whole team against the Twins. That just neither one of them played that great, and I expect a similar week. That's why I'm going to take the Rockies. And the Rockies have just pretty much, besides when they played you, they dominated. They've dominated almost every week. Not necessarily like when you look at it like stat-wise, but when categories, they've gotten 9-3. I just don't see how the Dodgers get 6+ categories. I really don't.
Absolutely. And I'm right. I'm right there with you. I've got the Colorado Rockies. They're really balanced on offense. You have guys like Lorenzo Cain. You've got Adalberto Mondesi, who's going to provide speed, which helps a lot there. Helps take speed category, and they're hitting for decent averages and power, so it helps keep OPS up. And the counting stats have been really good for them. Unfortunately, I mean, you look at the Rockies offensive bench right now, and you've got 5 players all off the lineup today, whether it's due to injury or just not being consistent starters. It's bound to happen. But I like the pitching staff, obviously led by Garrett Cole, Hyunjin Ryu. Mike Soroka's pitching absolutely out of his mind for the most part this year with a 1.01 ERA. I think the Rockies have this one in the bag for the most part. And at this moment, they actually lead 6-5 to 1. So that may be close. I think by the end of the week, we see an 8-4 win for the Colorado Rockies.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking as well. I don't think it'll be this close. But if it stays this close, of course, the Dodgers will. I think they'll have a good chance if they can keep it.
It's always
in striking distance.
It's always fun to have close matchups, and that so far that's what this week is. So moving on, I'd like to see this one remain close. That would be the St. Louis Cardinals traveling down to Florida, down to son of a bitch. What is the Marlins Stadium name? It's not the Trop because that's the Rays. I think it's just Marlins Stadium, I believe. So traveling to Marlins Stadium, taking on your Miami Marlins. I want to get I want to see what you feel on this game here.
It's Marlins Park. I just looked it up.
I mean, it's a division rivalry between you and Jared in the Jackie Robinson division.
You know, I have me winning, of course, like I do every week. But I think it'll be close. Usually, I would say I'm going to win 9-3, 9 categories to 3. But I've got myself winning like 7 categories to 5. I think I'll win the pitching stats, and I'll struggle maybe in like home runs. I don't think I'm going to have as many home runs as I did last week because not every player is going to run like they did last week. What's that?
I was surprised to see you have 20 plus home runs last week. I mean, that's something that has been harder for your team to do, but if it looks like if they hit, they hit. I mean, especially Michael Chavis and Jurickson Profar, they're definitely helping you a ton. It's going to make it tough for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, I think I'm going to win, but I think it's going to be close. I don't think my team's good enough to blow them out like necessarily, but I think it'll be a close win. We continue the ride. I think we continue the winning streak.
I did take I took the St. Louis Cardinals. I think it's going to sit right about this 6-5-1. It's not going to be it's going to be a heartbreaking loss for whoever loses it because it's going to be so close. But yeah, I do like your pitching staff for the most part, who are kind of like the Houston Astros, led by guys that you wouldn't expect. Sandy Alcantara, Caleb Smith, Zach Wheeler, and surprisingly Jordan Lyles of all pitchers. Fucking 45 innings with an ERA under 2. That was a great pickup by you. I just want to give you a little round of applause because I didn't believe in it, but it's fucking working. So
far, hopefully it works the rest of the season.
I don't expect him to be a 2 ERA guy, but if he's, I mean, he's kicking ass and taking names right now. So absolutely, just run with it if you can.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see what happens with him.
So for this last one, we get into the commissioners' games. I like doing these last because I want to focus on the rest of the league rather than focusing on us. But we've got the New York Yankees traveling down to Atlanta, down to take on the Braves, who coming off a hard loss week for them. They're hoping to bounce back. And so far, it's not looking like it because they lead 2 categories out of 12. That's it. They haven't looked great. They've struggled once again. I mean, it's only Tuesday. We haven't even finished all of tonight's games, but the Yankees look really damn good. They've got 8 home runs and 25. Holy shit. The Yankees have 25 RBIs in 2 days.
That's crazy.
What the? Gary Sanchez, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, and then Tim Beckham with 5 RBIs already on the week. Okay.
That's wild.
All right, then.
but it won't
Well,
continue.
then again, the real life Yankees are taking on the Baltimore Orioles, who absolutely suck. So
Yeah, and that showed today.
to say the least, 11-4. But I really hadn't even checked the scores of this when I put this together, and I had the Atlanta Braves winning, even though they lost to your Marlins this last week. I thought they would bounce back, and so far that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
This one's tough for me. This one's probably the toughest one out of all of them. I hope the Yankees lose. I hope they lose 12 categories to none. But realistically,
it's going to be
it's
tough the
bad.
way it's gone.
It's not going to happen. But that's tough. I didn't expect them to get off to that good of a start. I think I'm going to take the Braves, but I'm not confident. I'm not confident at all.
No, I mean, Rhys Hoskins is in a slump still. He's yet to get a hit in 6 at-bats this week. Eduardo Escobar is 0 for so far. So the Braves have a chance at this point, but if Sanchez and the rest of that actual Yankees lineup continues to kill the Orioles for another day, it's going to be out of hand for the Braves fairly quick.
Yeah, it is unfortunate of who the Yankees are playing. That doesn't help the Braves' case.
So moving on to the last one, it is
Game of the week.
The Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Chicago White Sox, and I want to talk so much shit to Steve, but at the same time, that has never worked out for me. Every time I've talked shit, it usually failed, especially in football. Even in the championship game of NHL, I didn't say shit because I didn't want to lose it.
You did win that one, so
I did.
It did.
That's why I kept my mouth shut. That's why I try to, because it usually doesn't go well if I talk. But this one, I don't
talk any shit.
I don't know how to feel. My team's hitting like shit so far. Well, kind of.
And it's going to continue.
Wise.
Yeah, that's going to continue.
My team's taking a Joey Gallo approach. It's 6 home runs with a 169 average. So it is what it is. I mean, I've got more strikeouts, but my ERA is crap. So I feel like this is just going to be a really odd week of I'll have some of the counting categories, but then Steve and his Blue Jays will take the ratios, and I think it's gonna end up being 6-6.
Exactly. Yeah.
I gave myself the win, but in the end, it's probably gonna be a tie. Just the way this week has started out so oddly. So
that's what I'm thinking. That's what I was thinking right before you said it was a tie. I'm thinking 6-6, or like 5-2 or something.
Yeah,
it's gonna be something crazy like that. That's what I just feel that.
It's going to be something weird and stupid. I just have that feeling. I mean, somehow Steve has a whip of 1.5, but has allowed 1 run.
but it just, I don't know. One part of my mind says that, and then one part of my mind says you're going to win like 8-4.
I don't even know.
I'm kind of leaning the 8-4. It's just I've seen your team win so much that I just get the feeling that it's going to do it again. But I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna keep the 6-6 tie. I'm gonna keep that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at this point if it happens. So that's what we've got for week 8.
Game of the week, though.
I mean, it's definitely going to be the most fun. I think. Obviously, Rockies Dodgers will be fun to watch because of Barnes and Keith having a good rivalry. Obviously, knowing each other. And I know if Sean were here, had we heard from him, I know he'd be talking shit to Vic.
Oh yeah.
But it is what it is, and I would love to see your Marlins try and upset the Cardinals. I think that would be fun and pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, they will. I have no doubts that they will do that.
So
if they don't win, I'm probably gonna flip out.
I would love to see that. I'd love to see you on the next show and just go on a 5-6 minute tirade. I would allow it. It would be so much fun.
Oh yeah.
But that's all I've got. If you have any closing words, Chris, be my guest. Go right ahead.
No, I don't have any. I'm not really.
Well, on that note, then, keep those fantasy lineups rolling, guys. It's been fun, and I can't wait to see what happens this week. It looks like it's going to be a blast.
Yep.
Thanks for joining me, Chris. I'm glad you were able to jump on this week.
No problem. Glad to come back.
And boop.